Hello, I'm Robert, and a shorter version of one of my videos, fact-checking stories that scare you. So I can well understand this looked quite alarming. They've had all that time of lockdown, it's going down, and suddenly it's going up again. But this is a very deceptive thing, because it's a combination of two, or rather more like four, separate graphs on top of each other. So first of all, we can definitely solve this, because you look at Europe, and Europe is far ahead of the United States. Wait for it to come up. So that's New York first. So you can see there how well New York is suppressing it. And so we've had it suppressed in China, in South Korea, in Singapore, in Vietnam very quickly, much of Asia, Taiwan, Japan and so on. But people keep on saying, oh, those are Asian countries, we can't do it. So then it came over to Europe, and then it's been suppressed in Italy and Spain. Now we're suppressing it. It's suppressed very well in Scotland, Germany, Denmark, Greece. And then people in the States say, that's just Europe. Europe can do it, but we can't do it. And then New Zealand do it, and Australia do it. And they are very successful in New Zealand. And Australia's had a bit of a problem, but they're bound to get over it. And then people in the States, but that's Australia, they can do it, but we can't. And then in the States, you get United States do it. You get New York State do it. And then you get people saying California and Arizona saying, that's New York. New York State can do it. Yes, they've done it, but we can't do it. And they just that's what's been going on all the time. And then, you get Costa Rica does it, and then Mexico says, Costa Rica did, but we can't do it, or whatever. So, it's been going like that for months now, for 6 months. It's happened. Country after country suppresses it. And all the others say, that country did, but we can't. But you can. You absolutely can. It's not rocket science. You've got to do the contact tracing and testing. You don't need lockdowns if you know where the virus is. So you've first got to find where the virus is in your country. The reason the entire United States had to go under lockdown is because they'd only done 20 tests per state by the 3rd of March. They maybe done a little bit more after that, but they just didn't know where it was. With just a few dozen tests to an entire state, and you have to do quite a few tests to each person if you're doing it thoroughly. Typically, if you've done less than 20 tests for each person you find, then you're not finding anything like the right number. So those 20 tests would be enough to find one person if you're doing it thoroughly. One person per state. That's obviously not going to tell you where it is. And so the United States was just completely blind, didn't know where it was, even though the WHO had warned way back in January. Dr. Tedros, on the 23rd of January, then he gave a briefing, or the WHO gave a briefing. Sorry, not Dr. Tedros, the Emergency Committee of the WHO gave this briefing, and they said that we have to have surveillance throughout. You've got to, as soon as you've got any cases in your country, you've got to survey for the virus. That you've got to get your testing in place. That you've got to be ready to step up on your contact tracing and the isolation. And you've got to be prepared for all that. They said that in January, 23rd of January. Only Singapore put the surveillance in place. They did it on the 28th of January. And even beginning of March, the United States was relying on its useless flight ban with China. The WHO said very correctly that a flight ban by itself does not stop COVID-19. The US flight ban that they put so much stock in, they didn't check Americans in China who wanted to come back. They only stopped Chinese people from coming from China, and the tens of thousands of Americans came from China back to the United States before they decided, we've got to do something about Americans coming back. It was an utterly useless flight ban. It didn't work because China and the US ended up with a big outbreak. And then they blame WHO and say, WHO, if you'd done flight bans, And if you'd allowed us to do a flight ban earlier, they could do a flight ban at any time. The WHO didn't prevent them doing a flight ban, they just did a useless one. So that's what's been going on. People just not listening. Very, very simple approach. And it's nothing like as costly as a lockdown, which is costing billions of dollars. And this, you're talking about maybe tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars at the most for the entire period for doing contact tracing. And then they have to be carefully trained and make sure they do it properly. You also have to educate the public. So it's the government. Now you can't do any, and I'm just repeating, this is nothing original. What I said, I've listened to every press briefing of the WHO, and with every single press briefing, way back to January, they have been saying what I'm saying now. It is nothing new. It just doesn't get reported. So they've made slight changes in the advice since then, mainly the matter of masks. So the reason they started saying that using cloth masks are okay, the problem is masks do help if you use them properly. The big question wasn't whether the masks help, but whether the general public would use them properly enough for it to make a difference. They knew the general public wouldn't use them properly, but would the general public using masks improperly still be worth doing? And the eventual the eventual result of research was, yes, it makes a small difference, it slightly improves. Although they don't do it properly, they still use it well enough to be a slight improvement. So that's about the only change that the WHO have made in all those 6 months. And people made a big thing about it and said, oh, if only the WHO had said that we should use masks back then. But you've got to remember, in Asian countries they use masks anyway, and they got COVID-19. It doesn't stop COVID-19. It doesn't stop you being infected. It can come in by your eyes, and and if you don't use your mask properly, you touch the surface, touch the front of your mask, you'll get the COVID-19 anyway. Or touch your eyes, nose, mouth, adjust your mask as the public do. So no, it was a test, trace, isolate, and it's been shown so many times it works. And then on general public, if they say to use masks, because that's what you're being asked to do, and it does make a slight difference. And if you look up how the WHO say how to use a mask, then use it properly, never touch the front of the mask, always wash it in hot water if you're using wash it thoroughly every day. If you're using a cloth mask, put it on around your ears, never touch the front of it at any point during the day, and then it will protect other people to some extent if you have COVID-19. And only if you're in the pre-symptomatic stage, if you are feeling at all ill, then don't go out amongst the public, because if you've got any symptoms that could even remotely be COVID-19, stay at home. And this might reduce by a few percent the risk of you infecting others if you happen to go out while you're pre-symptomatic with COVID-19. But if you keep the right distance from other people, then you won't infect them anyway. So it only matters if you're too close to them. So, and if you're coughing to your elbow, that also protects other people. So it really depends on the behaviour of the people. So what you've got to do, if your government is not explaining this, what you've got to do is to keep a distance of at least 1 metre. If you can touch the other person, it's too close. But you don't need to worry about being further away than that, because if I just pick up something from the ground, then the coughs propel something forward. I know it's not as big and heavy as this, but it's pretty much the same, according to WHO. Then it'll just go like this, like that, and it won't go 1 metre. It's not propelled with huge force like throwing a cricket ball or something. And so if you're 1 metre away from someone, the little droplets, the tiny fine ones that hang in the air, don't carry COVID-19. They carry the flu, but it seems they don't carry COVID-19. They know that experimentally, because with SARS they do carry it. One person gets onto a plane, 20 people get off that plane with SARS. with COVID-19, one person gets on the plane with SARS, and with all the people going back from Wuhan, it's still the same thing. One person goes on, even they're chatting to their neighbours and everything, but they're not turning around and talking straight into their face. And then one person gets off the plane with COVID-19. It is very, very different from SARS and very different from flu. So based on that experimental thing, and lots of data now, they've looked at lots and lots and lots of data, and WHO see no evidence that it's spread like flu or SARS through the air. So, and they get access to data, they talk to people before it's published, before it's even preprints. They're constantly talking with their big Zoom conferences with dozens of experts around the world and with governments. They have direct access to governments, and that's because they don't blurt out secrets from the governments they talk to. When US kept telling the WHO, you've got to tell them, you've got to shame China, they can't do that. They would have to shame the US as well for not doing its testing, shame the UK for delaying for stopping testing and tracing, and shame the UK for the SAGE group not releasing almost anything about the reason for their decisions. Lots of reasons the WHO could have for shaming people, but they just don't do that. It's not the way they operate. Shaming Brazil for not taking it seriously. They just don't do these things. So it is absolutely wrong to request them to shame China. If they did that, they would not be able to operate. They would not have the direct access that is so essential to be able to help these countries to go in, to be able to go anywhere, and they're not hiding things from the WHO. They know the WHO is not going to go around and tell everyone anything. So they have direct access, even in countries, even in places where it may be politically sensitive locally, but they can still talk to these people in a frank way because they have this approach. So the WHO advice is absolutely excellent. It's what you've got to follow. They have direct access to so much information that nobody else can have. The United States could never have this direct access because of its politics. So the WHO is not airborne, and they follow everything. And if there was any slightest hint they could be airborne, they would say, except with certain medical operations. So how am I doing? Yeah, I'll do maybe 20 minutes. That'll do fine. So the things you've got to do: make sure you do the proper, thorough washing of your hands. You've got to wash between the fingers, fingernails, back of hand, front of hand, thumbs. There's a whole ritual. You've got to do the whole thing, and there's if you follow this ritual, you get it very quickly. Just do what Dr. Tedros shows you the routine. You don't need to remember it. Just go ahead and keep on copying until it becomes automatic. And very quickly, do that 20 seconds every time you wash your hands, and you need to wash it thoroughly. Then follow that routine. So everyone should be doing that. If you're not doing that, then someone hasn't been explaining things properly to you, the absolute importance of this. People don't realise this actually stops COVID-19. It is destroyed by soap. It's just a little smidgen of genetic material with a kind of coating of other stuff, and just a little bit of soap, and it's completely gone. It's also not a contact virus, so if you touch even a big glob of stuff that's got COVID-19, it's not going to go into your skin. It is only going to go in through your eyes, nose and mouth. It's a respiratory virus. So in order to get into you, you've got to touch your eyes, nose and mouth. That's why if you can get totally out of the habit of touching your eyes, nose and mouth, then you've completely got rid of that way of it coming into you. And the only other way it can come into you is through these droplets that I talked about coming into your eyes, or into your nose, or into your mouth directly, because you're not touching them. Then to stop that, keep 1 meter away from anyone who might have COVID-19. And but you only need to keep 1 meter away if they're talking. Just breathing does not produce the big droplets, and that is what was clear from these plane flights and from lots of other evidence, that just breathing is not enough. So just walking past someone, you're not talking to them, and these droplets go down quickly, you're not going to catch it from someone else by just walking past. Even if they coughed a minute ago, it's not going to get to you because all the droplets have got to the ground already. So keep the distance, wash your hands thoroughly, don't touch your eyes, nose and mouth. If you do have to scratch yourself, it's okay to scratch other areas of your face, but you avoid those areas. It's better, it's easier to remember not to touch your face at all if you can do that. And especially when you're eating as well, it could come via shared cutlery or past the salt cellar. Happened in Germany with one person. He just turned around and the only contact he had, very clear tracing. He knew exactly where everyone was because it was in a company where everyone had to say where they were at every time. So he had picked up this salt shaker, and then that was when he got the COVID-19. Obviously not when picking it up because it's not contact. He must have either touched his eyes, nose and mouth, or maybe touched something and put his finger into his mouth when eating. So you've got to watch out for that. And but it's very difficult to get this virus. Even people who are very close together in a household, then 9 out of 10, then they're not going to give it to anyone, especially if they isolate as soon as they've got serious symptoms. And then the one person left, it's a super spreader event. It's not so much the person as the event, it seems to be. So maybe they go to a choir and they're all singing, and they're singing away at close quarters, or they're shouting and raucous drunken laughter, or singing at close quarters in a party. That's the worst. The German outbreak mainly started with raucous parties in Swiss chalets after skiing, happy ski parties. And so after lockdown, it's no surprise that because we saw this video of all the people celebrating the end of lockdown, going around and shouting and singing and stuff, that is exactly the perfect way to do super spreading. They obviously hadn't had it clearly explained to them. And people jumping into swimming pools and running around and shouting and just having a general good time, and very crowded. It's no wonder that we had this upturn, but it's only in part of the United States. So as I said, in Europe, the entire Europe has controlled its outbreak. So now we look at the US, the Northeast has controlled its outbreak. For some reason, Northeast was much more careful. I think it's nothing to do with being Democrat. New York was Democrat, but so is California, and California is West, and it's doing that. So it's not Democrat and Republican. I think what it is that New York was hit first, and it went way up and then down, and then when it hits the intensive care unit capacity and people start not having enough medicine and not having, they can't get the medicine they need, they haven't got the ventilators, and people start dying because nurses doing their tragic videos that they upload to YouTube saying, oh, we just can't, we're having to decide who to give the ventilators to, and things like that. When it gets really tragic like that, then the general public listen. And then when you get old people in old people's homes, they're amongst the first to be affected as well. So, but that doesn't happen straight away. So you've got this big uptick here, then it is usually 2 to 3 weeks later before that uptick leads to an increase of the deaths. So it goes up for a long, long way. So if they just react like you saw how high it went in the Northeast, and we saw how high it went with, it went all the way up to probably about there before they did anything. I don't know, I haven't looked up when they did anything, but it's usually about 1 week. This is the sign of something serious going on, sometime around there. Then you can see it's curving down. It's up to here, it wasn't doing anything. Even if they did the thing back here, then it takes quite a few days before the effects of that start to make a difference in your cases per day, because it's got a long incubation period, and then for a long time after the incubation period, then people are feeling just a little bit ill, and if they're not very aware, they don't even suspect they've got COVID-19. And it can easily take 9 days to 2 weeks before from a new wave of infections to the new wave of cases that are detected that were caused by those infections. So if just today, immediately, they put in a big thing in the west and south of America to stop it, then you can expect to keep on going up. If there's nothing previous that stopped it, if the stopping happens now, and it was going up all the time, you expect to keep on going up for another week or 2 weeks before the effect of your measures now start to show in the cases per day. So this is what could happen. Now, it may not be as bad as that, so I'm going to give you a little bit of optimism. Now let's look at the latest for, haven't looked at it yet. I will bring this up. It takes a little while to appear on my on my computer, so I'll think. But, actually, I'm not sure. It may take. I remember before I tried it, to go out to find it. So I'll just show you with this, and then. But what I'm wondering is if it's going up at all. So this is where it looked almost like it could be that was a blip. See what I mean? Because these ones, it just goes down for a couple of days and then goes up. Down for a couple of days and goes up, obviously a weekend thing. But this seemed to be, that is clearly less than that. And then that is less than that. It looks almost like Arizona could be a blip. If you are very optimistic. So how could that be? Then that could be that there were all these celebratory parties sometime back here, soon enough to cause a blip. And then after parties were over, people then sobered up, and maybe there was some messaging as well to help them. And then if for the next week after that they've been very careful, they might go up, they might do a blip, or more likely steady off at that level, or it might even do a blip. I don't know if that's possible. So if you are very optimistic, you look at these figures and you think, well, maybe that is a delayed effect of something that happened back then, and it's not going to keep on going up and up. If it isn't that, then it could go up to 10,000 before it starts coming down again, if they start reacting now. So, but remember that there are two sides to this. There's the public measures, which you can do, and then there's the governmental measures, which it has to be done by the government. And it's another thing WHO have said over and 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 over. That's why he said it was like a broken record. 3 times a week for 6 months. In the early stages, it was every day during the week, 5 days a week during working, all 5 working days. They were saying this with every single press briefing. After that, they did that for several weeks. And then after that, they were doing it 3 days a week, because that's how often they did the press briefing. And every single one, they were saying this, that the public have to be engaged, you have to teach the public have to wash their hands, physical distancing, not to touch eyes, nose and mouth. And then they also said, and the government has to be engaged, and they have to do the testing, they have to do the tracing, they have to do the surveillance in the community. And then they also said you have to be careful about personal protection equipment, you have to protect people in care homes. They said those things nearly every time as well. And you have to be careful of people in hospitals and in psychiatric wards and in prisons. They were saying all that back in January, February too. And then you get people now saying, being very parochial, focusing on just their state, not even New York. Arizona is only interested in Arizona. The governor of Arizona is not looking at the lessons that have been learnt in New York State. That is how parochial the United States is being. California, which is a Democrat, is not looking at the lessons learned in New York, which is also Democrat. Again, California has been incredibly parochial. It's just looking at its own state, just like looking through a keyhole at what you can see in front of you, and not listening to the rest of the world. And that's been the problem all along. Italy gets it, and then Italy sends these urgent letters to the rest of Europe, and they just ignored what Italy said. Only very close neighbours, like politically close Spain and Germany, responded. And meanwhile, Greece had done a good reaction much earlier, but Italy didn't listen to Greece. So, and neither of them listened to South Korea, and nobody listened to Vietnam, nobody listened to Taiwan, nobody listened to the Faroe Islands, which responded very early on, very quickly, and so they were very controlled because they're tiny little islands just north of Scotland, which is part of Denmark, but they have a fair bit of independence, and they decided that they've really got to ramp up in testing. I think back in January, February kind of time, they were amongst the earliest in the world, and just a tiny little island north of Scotland, but part of Denmark. So, you can do it. And then Jersey Island has just controlled itself, has controlled its outbreak. So Ireland's of course very easy, but the entire country, Scotland, is very well controlled, I'm pleased to say, having been very, very late in responding. So you definitely can do it. Everyone can do this. It's not rocket science, it's not difficult. And now you've got enough testing to at least know where it is. I don't think that's going to come up in time. So I'm going to come down and look at this map, but anyway, it's not very important. It's got one of these delayed launch things. It doesn't come up instantly. So, and probably the window has to be active before it does it. Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to show you that now that we've got the viruses, we know the virus very well. Oh, I'm going to go on to half an hour, I think. I meant to do a short one, but I'll try. I won't. Another few minutes, then I'll stop. Right. So I must show you this. So first thing you notice is most of the United States, to this day, and this is very kept up to date all the time, that most of the United States is grey. So if you're in a rural area of the Midwest or the West, or even parts of the South, then chances are you've had none or very few cases. That's what grey means here. Then you look at the blue, and even in Arizona there's a blue. The two blues, in fact. The Santa Cruz County, which is down 34 from 60 something, and then there's this one here, Apache County, which is down to 27 from 36. Those are cases per day. So even in Arizona, there are two counties where it is well controlled. So this shows, I know people will say, oh, those were easy counties. I don't know much about the states, so I don't know what it is about makes it easy. But it shows that those are counties that that it is possible in Arizona to control it. Because these were 36 cases, so they had an outbreak to start with. They must have had an upsurge to 36. And doesn't happen if you leave it alone. By the time you go to 36, there's no way it's going to peter out by itself. You're going to have super spreader events. The thing is, it can't peter out if you've only got 2 or 3, because it depends on these super spreader events. If you're lucky, you could have 9, and none of them passed on to anyone. Then you have the 10th person, and by the time you've got 36, then it's not feasible. It's just going to peter out. So Apache County is definitely doing something to control it in Arizona. It may be it has enough tracers, it may be it's using local people, it may be it has enough tests, it may be that the people locally are doing the physical distancing properly, that they are listening. So even in Arizona, there's some people who are doing it right. And so it may be that it's somewhat easier in that state, in that county, but still, it wouldn't happen naturally. Some people are doing it right. Now, if you look all the way around, the only county, maybe more than one state, but the worst of all is California hasn't got a single county that is decreasing. The decreasing ones are blue. I don't think it's got many that are even steady. So California is one of the worst in terms of compliance. It's obviously the people in California, maybe they're too laid back and say, it's not going to happen to us. It's not going to happen to us. They're kind of preferably a little bit laid back, aren't they? So maybe that's a little bit of what's going on in California. And partly it's the government thing, and apparently they haven't been giving enough funding. They've been leaving it to the counties to do the tracing, but they haven't been giving them quite enough resources to do what's needed. And so anyway, California has to get its act together, or it will soon have vast numbers. And this virus doesn't stop naturally by itself. It's clear that it's not seasonal. This is the height of summer, and we're talking about Arizona in the height of summer. It is obviously not a seasonal virus. There was lots of evidence early on showing that it was not seasonal, and this totally confirms it. It increases in the middle of the summer, or the height of summer, past Midsummer's Day. And so, but then what I want to explain is that these little patches, now that we've got, if you'd gone back to the beginning of the lockdown, it would be impossible to create this map because there just wasn't any testing. It was just maybe one test, one person discovered in California, one person, I can't remember, there was a handful in California, I think, early on. The many states didn't have any cases because they just weren't testing. And then if they go and test it in the wrong place in that state, they don't find it. But it was there. It was all over the place. They just didn't know. But now, so they did a lockdown, and that is the only situation. WHO say you can do a lockdown when you don't know where it is in society. And sadly, because the US had not listened to the other things that the WHO was saying in January, they had absolutely no idea where it was. So they had to do a country-wide lockdown. Now, it's going up and up and up again in these places like California, like Arizona, but they have much more information. So admittedly, Arizona, all the cases are increasing, but they have some states with where it's none or few. So I said that they haven't got any controlled outbreaks, but they do have quite a few counties where there's still few or no cases. So if they have to do redo a lockdown, they can focus on these ones, especially where it's rapidly increasing, even if the cases are small, from 1.3 to 4 a day, but it's a rapid increase, so that's a place to focus. There we are, 0.6 to 3.7, so that's a place to focus. All those red areas deserve focusing on, and then any of the orange areas which are with a rapid increase. And the reason to do the lockdown is to get your public information in place. So the public are obviously not complying, so you do the lockdown, you force them to comply by locking them down, say they've got to stay at home. Everyone stays at home. Then you also, it's partly that, and partly that you're not doing enough testing and tracing. So during the lockdown, you should take the lockdown as an opportunity to rapidly increase your testing and rapidly increase your tracing. New York didn't do that. New York only reached 100% contact tracing in the second week of June, well into its outbreak. It's got plenty of testing now. I don't know when that approach, that was earlier on. Oh yes, 29th of May, it reached adequate testing levels. And its outbreak started long before that. So the WHO again, as soon as the lockdown started, going around the world the big way, WHO said, now you're in lockdown, it's a perfect opportunity, you've got very few contacts because everyone is staying at home. Do the contact tracing now, ramp up on testing, find the virus, do the contact tracing. And they just said, whatever, and went on with their stuff and just didn't listen. Even though the WHO was saying that 3 times a week with every press briefing. Once the lockdown started, then that was a consistent message. Every time the WHO gave that press briefing, 3 times a week, they said, now you're in lockdown, this is the perfect opportunity to ramp up on tracing and testing, find the virus, and then do your contact tracing. They said that 3 times a week, all the way through March, all the way through April, all the way through May, and still in June, United Kingdom is not really listening, Arizona is not listening at all. Scotland is listening, but England not quite so much. They have stepped up, but maybe not quite enough. And they eased their lockdown. England eased its lockdown, so maybe it is getting there, but it eased the lockdown before doing the contact tracing properly, which is a daft way to proceed, because in lockdown every person's got maybe 5 or 10 contacts. Ease it, and they've now got 20, and your contact tracing becomes 4 or 5 times harder. So you shouldn't do your contact tracing after you ease the lockdown. Your perfect moment is just before you ease lockdown. And you should continue the lockdown like Scotland is doing for another few weeks after you've got adequate contact tracing. But very few people in Scotland is doing that. I'm very glad to hear. We have a good advisor, Devi Shrita. I followed her on Twitter, and she has been advising the Scottish Government well. Not like a SAGE group in England who are not doing a good job. They don't seem to be aware. They don't have the public health advisors. They're just modelers, and they just don't have the right kind of knowledge. Their main focus is modelling rather than public health. Anyway, so that's that. So oh dear, this is going on. I meant to do a short one. I will stop in a few minutes now. So that's the main thing I wanted to say, is that you can do a targeted lockdown, and so I expect you will have to go back into lockdown. I don't see it going any other way. But it won't be the whole state in lockdown. It will be little targeted regions. We've done a lockdown we've got the city of Leicester in England is now under lockdown. Decision of the mayor of Leicester, if I understand right, because he just decided that it was just too bad in Leicester and he had to do a lockdown. So you may even get that happening in the States on the county level, that the local, whatever you call them or even the mayors of your state, of your cities, may make independent decisions and say this is unacceptable. We've got too many people, we've overflowing our intensive care units, we're going to have a lockdown, even if the state government isn't saying that. I'm sure you're going to have lockdowns where it's worse. There are going to be places in Arizona where they don't have enough intensive care units. And even if the government doesn't do a lockdown, for sure, those cities are going to. And it's going to be the same in California. And eventually the governors just can't resist this call that we've got to do something about it. And then they do the testing and tracing at last. Because Arizona is not doing anything like that with testing and tracing. So that is why yes, that's still not arriving. It's hopeless. It's decided it's inactive, you see, because that's an inactive window. I'm a programmer. I know a bit about this. When a window is inactive, then the Windows operating system gives us a lower priority, and so that's probably why that's not going. And maybe I've got things going on stretching mine a bit. So Windows decided that tab is just not got high enough priority. So anyway, so this is not really one peak. It's one peak like that from New York, and other states going a kind of peak like that somehow, and leveling off, but still quite low. There's another peak like that. There's another peak like that in the Midwest. So it's going more like that, and up a little bit. But then the Midwest will notice, and it's not going to go up as high as it peak. In fact, that peak in the Midwest may well be the same thing, a combination of two, one's going like that one. But there are some, if you go down here, if you go down to individual states, then you can see all the ones, nearly all the ones with their big ups, really big ups, like Arizona, then it never had a decline. That's the lockdown, where it's sort of levelled off, but it never put in adequate tracing and testing. They never managed to start going down. Then they eased lockdown, and then it's just going up and up. And nearly all of the ones that have these big ups, you can see, they don't have humps and then down. They may level off, but they never started going down. And that's the general picture, level off and then up. And then if you've got ones that do it like these ones, mostly the same, but that goes way down and then stays level, same there. And so a lot of those. Then you get ones like Guam, which has a little extra peak, and Hawaii, if I can find that, has a little extra peak, but smaller than the one before. I can't see why. Why there? I don't know why it's showing the whole thing tiny. It might have a little spike of data collection like that. And so you get a few, and Alaska is doing that as well. So you do get a few with a little peak, but it's those normally ones with very few cases. It's the most cases at the beginning, and these little extra peaks are just some cluster that they missed as they eased up, and then they're going to have to control that. But you're talking about very few cases per day for the ones that do have a genuine peak down and then up again. They took their eye off the ball. So the ones that have been going down for a long time, they keep going down. And that's a genuine pattern. None of the ones that are going down for a long time are going up, because they are controlling it. And as they ease lockdown, so what that means is that these ones got enough, got the combination of testing, tracing, and then clear communication to the public. So the general public in New York. So you saw with masks, that's an easy, obvious thing. Some things are not so easy. That in the Northeast, they were wearing masks once they've been told to do it. Go to California, they weren't. It's not been properly explained to the people in California why you need to wear masks. You've got to have clear public messaging saying to the people that what you're risking is your parents and your grandparents. And if you don't wear a mask and all the other things, you've got to do the physical distancing. But the very obvious thing was the mask. But then it was also very clear that Californians weren't doing the physical distancing. You've got to have very clear, consistent, repetitive public messaging telling them that this is why you're doing it. It's not just some silly thing you're doing it. You're doing it to protect your parents and your grandparents and other people's parents and grandparents. You're doing it to protect yourself as well. Even if you're in your 20-something, then 2 in 1,000 of you will likely die if you get COVID-19. So it's not like flu. You don't get 2 in 1,000 of 20-somethings dying of flu. And then several percent of you are going to end up in a ventilator, which is not pleasant at all. Several percent will end up in hospital, and then a few of those, I'm not sure if it's 1% or something, will end up with a ventilator, even if you're young. And then being in a ventilator means you go to hospital, and then they say, oh, it's too bad, we're going to have to put you on the ventilator. And then a month, maybe even 2 months passes by, and so you see, they say, we're going to put you on the ventilator. Then you wake up again, they say, it's 6 weeks later. And we've been looking after you for 6 weeks, with doctors looking after you, and having to monitor every single breath you make. And then after that, you have several months to recover, because when you wake up from your ventilator, you're wheezing. You're not wheezing, you just can't get a breath very easily, you're on oxygen. And after a while, they eventually were able to take off the oxygen, and you're able to breathe, but you're going like, yes, I did fine, sort of thing. You've got a quiet voice because it's difficult to get the breath pressure. And then gradually you're a bit hoarse sounding, and then eventually you get and then you're out of hospital and you're reasonably okay, but you can't kind of jog, you can't run up the stairs or anything like that. And then gradually over several months you get back to normal. They don't actually know quite how normal you get, but it's thought that everyone completely recovers, eventually nearly everyone. But you might have some loss of function for your lungs, but I think probably you recover. So that is not pleasant either. And so you 1 in 1,000 or 2 in 1,000, you maybe don't have any of your friends do actually die of the young ones. Though you probably may, once it's well into it, you get some of the older ones, you hear that someone's granny has died. And then eventually, you get to the point where you've had, if you have a big social circle, you probably know a friend of a friend who's been in ventilator, because that's really more than 100 or so maybe. It's more of that sort of an order. So once it gets to that point, then people realise how serious it is. That is, obviously, if only some of you get COVID-19. So if it's only a few percent of you get COVID-19, you could divide those numbers by 10 or by 20 or by 100, depending on what percentage of you get COVID-19. But if you have a really serious outbreak somewhere, then the people in that area will really start, when it gets a few percent that have got it, and they really start to know people who've died and so on. And so you've got to. So anyway, so now I'll stop it. I will stop this now. But I did a couple of short ones. I thought, having done a couple of short ones, I'll be able to do a short one of this. But sadly, I got carried away and I made it a bit long. But I did make the important points at the beginning. If any of you here still at the end, then thanks for listening, and I hope it was helpful. And do subscribe and like the usual thing, and like the Doomsday Debug group on Facebook. Hopefully that will help you, and do join and help if you're good at debunking. You really can do with lots of debunkers who are good at doing proper fact checking.